Everyone knows the story of Puss in Boots. A clever cat, a poor young man, a happy ending, a harmless fairy tale told to children for centuries. But that version leaves something out. Strip away the charm, the boots, and the smiles, and what remains is a story built on manipulation, silence, and a decision no one ever questions. This is not the tale of a brave hero rising through wit. It's the story of the exact moment the cat spoke, and how that single answer quietly set everything else in motion. It begins the way many old stories do, with death and division. A miller dies and leaves behind what little he owns to his 3 sons. The eldest takes the mill. The second gets the donkey. And the youngest is handed something that barely counts as an inheritance at all. A cat, no land, no tools, no money. Just an animal. At first glance, it feels unfair, almost cruel, but look closer, and something else becomes clear. The youngest son doesn't talk about work or survival or finding a way forwarders. He immediately jumps to despair. He complains that the only value the cat has is as food or fur. After that, he expects to starve. That reaction matters, because it shows us exactly who he is before anything magical happens. Passive, resentful, waiting for life to be handed to him. His future depends entirely on what others leave behind or take away. And that's when the story quietly shifts. The cat hears him, not later, not after days of hunger, right then. And instead of running, scratching, or begging, the cat speaks, not in panic, not in fear, but calmly, confidently, as if this moment has been expected. All he asks for is a bag and a pair of boots. Nothing more, no explanation, no proof, just a promise that things are not as hopeless as they seem. And the young man agrees. That decision, small, almost ridiculous, is where the real story begins. A talking animal should have changed everything. It should have stopped the story in its tracks. But it doesn't. The young man doesn't question how the cat can speak. He doesn't ask why it never spoke before. He doesn't wonder what kind of creature he's living with. He listens and obeys. That silence is important because the cat doesn't sound surprised by his own voice. He doesn't explain himself. He speaks the way someone does when they already know the answer will be yes. Calm, measured, certain. All he asks for are boots to walk freely and a bag to carry what he brings back. On the surface, it sounds harmless, practical even. But in stories like this, nothing is ever just practical. Boots mean movement, status, access. A bag means taking, carrying, delivering. The moment the boots are made, the balance between them shifts. The cat doesn't act like a servant. He gives instructions. He sets the pace. He leaves without waiting for approval, and the young man lets him go. From that point on, the cat is no longer reacting to events. He's directing them, and his first move isn't magic. It's a lie, not a reckless one, not a desperate one. A careful lie aimed at the right person, delivered at the right moment. A lie designed to open doors that would never open for a poor miller's son. This is where the fairy tale stops being innocent. Because once the cat speaks, every success that follows stops being luck and starts being a plan. From this point forward, the young man barely acts at all. He follows instructions. He bathes when told. He waits when told. He stays silent while his life is rearranged around him. And that silence isn't ignorance, it's convenience. Questioning the cat would mean responsibility. It would mean asking how and why. It would mean risking the one thing he's just been offered: escape. So instead, he chooses not to know. The cat, meanwhile, works relentlessly. He hunts and delivers gifts to the king, always using the same name, the Marquis of Carabas, a title invented from nothing, repeated until it starts to sound real. That's how power often works in these stories. Say something often enough and the world adjusts. The young man never corrects the lie. never hesitates, never objects. When he's told to bathe in the river and leave everything behind, he does it without protest. He doesn't ask what the plan is. He doesn't ask what happens if it fails. He simply trusts that the cat knows what he's doing. Or worse, he doesn't care, because every step forward costs him nothing. The cat lies. The cat threatens. The cat takes risks. All the young man has to do is accept the rewards. Fine clothes, a seat beside the king, the attention of a princess. By the time he realizes how far things have gone, it's already too late to turn back. And the cat knows it, because obedience is easiest to secure when the price has already been paid in silence. The boots change everything. Before them, the cat is just an animal. Clever, perhaps, but limited. After them, he moves freely through the world of men. He walks roads meant for people. He enters spaces animals don't belong. He is seen, heard, and taken seriously. And he uses that access immediately. The first gifts he brings to the king aren't extraordinary. Small game, simple offerings. But the lie attached to them is precise. Each time the cat delivers the same message. They are from the Marquis of Carabas. Not a peasant, not a nobody, a noble. The king accepts the gifts, and more importantly, he accepts the name. No investigation, no verification, just repetition, slowly turning fiction into fact. This is the cat's real talent. Not magic, not strength, timing. He understands something crucial. People don't question what benefits them. The king enjoys the gifts. The court enjoys the story. And so, no one asks where this mysterious marquis came from. Meanwhile, the young man does nothing. He doesn't earn the title. He doesn't claim it. He simply allows it to settle onto him like a borrowed coat. And once a lie is rewarded, it stops feeling like a lie at all. The boots carry the cat further and further ahead of events, shaping the world before anyone else arrives. By the time the carriage rolls forward, reality has already been prepared. This is no longer improvisation, it's control. And the worst part is this: the first lie works perfectly, which means there's no reason to stop. The king is often treated as a fool in this story. Gullible, easily impressed, too quick to trust a talking cat and a name he's never heard before. But that explanation is too simple, because the king wants to believe. A ruler doesn't need truth as much as he needs stability. He needs wealth flowing in, alliances forming, futures secured. And when a mysterious marquis appears, one who sends gifts without asking for anything in return, it feels less like a risk and more like a solution. The cat understands this perfectly. He never pushes. He never demands. He lets the king draw his own conclusions. Every rabbit and partridge becomes proof of generosity. Every mention of the Marquis of Carabas plants the idea of land, influence, and power. And the king fills in the gaps himself. By the time the bathing scene unfolds, by the time the accident in the river happens, the king is already invested. He recognizes the name. He remembers the gifts. Helping the young man feels natural. Rewarding him feels deserved. The cat doesn't force the king's hand. He simply gives him permission to act on what he already wants. That's why the deception works so smoothly, because it isn't imposed from the outside. It's welcomed from within. And as the young man sits silently beside the king in borrowed clothes, the future is no longer being decided by birth or merit, but by belief. A belief carefully placed, by a cat in boots who never once needed to raise his voice. By the time belief has settled in, action follows naturally. What was once accepted quietly now begins to shape the world. That's when the carriage begins its journey, and the story is already moving on rails. The cat runs ahead, boots striking the road long before the king arrives. He speaks to peasants working land that was never theirs to give, and they obey him. Not because he convinces them, not because they believe him, but because they're afraid. He tells them exactly what to say when the king passes. He tells them whose land this is now. And when the carriage arrives, the answers come out perfectly rehearsed. Field after field, meadow after meadow, all belonging to the Marquis of Carabas. No one corrects the lie. That's the moment the plan reveals itself. This isn't a trick aimed at one person. It's a performance staged for an entire world. The peasants stay silent. The king nods along. The young man says nothing at all. Everyone plays their part. And here's the unsettling question the story never asks out loud. Why didn't anyone resist? Was it the cat's voice, his authority, or something older, something unspoken that made people lower their eyes and comply? Because from this point on, the lie no longer belongs to the cat alone. It's shared, protected, maintained by everyone who benefits from it or fears breaking it. And that raises a thought worth sitting with. If you were standing there watching this happen, at what moment would you have spoken up? Let me know what you think. At the end of the road stands a castle that does not belong to the story's hero. It never did. It belongs to the ogre, the richest, most powerful creature in the land. The true owner of the fields, the meadows, the roads the king has just admired. And for the first time, the cat steps into a place where lying alone won't be enough. So he changes tactics. He doesn't arrive as a conqueror. He arrives as a guest, polite, respectful, curious. He flatters the ogre, praises his power, listens as the creature boasts about his abilities. And then, carefully, he asks questions. Not accusations, not challenges, just invitations to show off. Can you really turn into anything? The ogre does exactly what the cat expects. First, something large, impressive, dangerous. Then, something small. That's the moment everything ends. There is no duel, no struggle, no hesitation. One movement and the ogre is gone, erased by his own arrogance and the cat's patience. The castle is suddenly empty. The land was suddenly ownerless. And just like that, the final obstacle disappears. When the king arrives, he doesn't see a crime scene. He sees wealth, comfort, a feast prepared in advance. He sees proof that everything he's been told was true. No one asks where the ogre went. No one asks who owned this place yesterday, because the story no longer needs answers. By the time the young man steps inside the castle, the world has already decided who he is. And the cat, standing quietly nearby, has everything exactly where he wants it. The wedding comes quickly, too quickly. The king offers his daughter. The young man accepts. The castle is filled with celebration, and everyone agrees that the story has reached its happy ending. But look closer at who truly changed their position. The miller's son gains a title, a wife, and security, but no authority of his own. He owns what he's given, not what he understands. He rules without knowing how he got there. The cat, on the other hand, loses nothing. He no longer needs to lie. He no longer needs to threaten. He no longer needs to run ahead of events. Now he stays. In some versions of the tale, the cat becomes a lord. In others, he remains close to power, treated not as a servant, but as an equal. He hunts for pleasure, not survival. He speaks when he wants. He is listened to. And that's the key. From the very beginning, this was never about helping a poor young man. It was about position, about influence, about moving from the margins of the world to its center without ever being questioned. The boots opened doors. The lies rearranged reality. The obedience made it effortless. And once the plan is complete, the cat doesn't explain himself. He doesn't justify his actions. He doesn't even demand gratitude. Because true power doesn't need acknowledgement. It simply stays in the room. Long after everyone else thinks the story is over, only after everything is settled does the cost become visible. The miller's son never makes a single meaningful choice of his own. From the moment the cat speaks, his role is reduced to consent. He agrees, he follows, he benefits, and in return he gives up something far more valuable than land or gold. He gives up agency. Every lie spoken in his name becomes his responsibility, whether he admits it or not. Every threat delivered on his behalf binds him tighter to the outcome. By staying silent, he allows the cat to act without limits, and silence, in stories like this, is never neutral. The cat understands this better than anyone, because obedience is safer than resistance. It keeps hands clean. It allows someone else to cross the lines while you enjoy the rewards. And once those rewards are accepted, refusing the consequences is no longer an option. In older versions of the tale, this is where things turn. The animal tests the master, pretends to die, waits to see what loyalty looks like when there's nothing left to gain. And when the answer is betrayal, when gratitude collapses into convenience, the cat leaves. Or worse, ensure the fortune vanishes as easily as it appeared. That possibility hangs over the ending like a shadow, because a life built entirely on obedience can never truly belong to the one living it. And a deal made without questions doesn't end when the celebration does. It just becomes invisible. And that may be the most unsettling lesson the story leaves behind. On the surface, the answer seems obvious. The miller's son ends the story rich, married, and secure. The king stabilizes his kingdom through a powerful alliance. The court celebrates. Order is restored. The tale closes with smiles and certainty. But fairy tales rarely end where the truth does. Because winning isn't just about where you end up. It's about who holds control when everything goes quiet. The miller's son inherits a life he doesn't understand. He lives inside a story written by someone else, dependent on a foundation he never built. His comfort exists only as long as the arrangement holds. The king gains a son-in-law but also introduces an unknown force into the heart of his court. One he never vetted, never questioned, never truly saw. And the cat? The cat walks away untouched. He survives every version of the story. In some, he gains status. In others, influence. In all of them, he proves the same thing. The world doesn't belong to the strongest or the bravest, but to the one who understands how others think, fear, and hope. No sword was drawn, no spell was cast, no rule was broken openly, and yet an entire kingdom changed hands. If this were truly a children's story, that would be the end. But it isn't, because once you realize who benefited the most, you can't unsee it. That's where the original story leaves us. No punishment, no revelation, no balance restored. Just a kingdom quietly rearranged. The miller's son lives comfortably, never forced to confront how fragile his fortune really is. The king believes he secured the future, unaware of how little he controlled the process. And the cat, clever, patient, and unreadable, remains exactly where he wanted to be from the start. Not a hero, not a villain, but something far more dangerous. A figure who never needed force, who never needed to rule openly, who only needed others to choose the path he laid in front of them. That's why this story has survived for centuries. Not because it teaches hard work or honesty, but because it quietly reminds us how easily power moves when no one asks the wrong questions. So what do you think this story really warns us about? Was the cat a savior, a manipulator, or something else entirely? If this ending stayed with you, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments, whether about this story or others that left you uneasy long after they ended.